Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. In November of 2014, we started this podcast. And if you take an average of about 50 episodes a year, that's close to 400 episodes. 400 episodes without a glitch, I might add. And then there was one glitch. We missed one episode. And then a second episode. What was really happening? How come there was this factor of stalling? In today's episode, we'll talk about stalling and the stages that we go through every time we end up with a stall. Because every stall isn't one event. In fact, it is a cascade of events. One thing happens in the second or third or fourth, and suddenly you're in this trap and you don't know how to get out of it. So while I will cover 3 points in every episode, today I'm just going to talk about stalling and the way it happened to me. Just a few months ago, I was in a very happy mood. You could say I was overconfident in a way. And there was a reason for this sense of overconfidence. When I started out the podcast in November of 2016, writing the podcast was always a struggle. I'd have to think of topics on Monday, then start to write a bit on Tuesday, Wednesday, record it, edit it, put music together. And by Saturday morning, which is when the podcast would go out, it was just so draining because all of this stuff had to be done on a continuous basis because I'd finish it off. Sunday would come along and then back to Monday again. Now, at that point, I'd been writing articles of about 800 words and scripting for the podcast was close to 3,000 words, sometimes 2,000, but mostly 3,000. And it just drove me nuts. For how long? Not for a few weeks or a few months, but for almost 2 years. Once I crossed that 2-year limit, and this is arbitrary, it's not like it'll happen to you in 2 years. It just happened for me in 2 years. And once I crossed that 2-year limit, I could turn out 2,000 word, 3,000 word articles on an ongoing basis. At first, you're not sure of yourself. Maybe it's just a fluke and maybe things will change. But the 3rd year passed, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and here we are in our 8th year, and I was feeling superbly confident. It didn't matter what kind of week was thrown at me, I was going to do the podcast. And that's when I made my first mistake. And this is a mistake that all of us make, whether we're drawing a cartoon, whether we're cooking a dish, or we're writing a script for a podcast. And that is, we stop doing the preparation. If you want to find the genesis of a stall, it goes back to preparation. Until that slow down moment, I had been doing just fine. I'd start off with some topics. I'd do a little bit on Monday, a little bit on Tuesday, but I had several topics going. So I never really ran out of ideas. There was no pressure on me to do anything other than just go through that on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I'd have several scripts for podcasts all lined up in a row. At one point, I had podcasts recorded for 3 months in a row. The whole aspect of preparation is just this factor of a deadline. And we used to have this deadline before the pandemic where we'd work for 12 weeks and then we'd take a month off, which meant that we had to have at least 4 podcasts for the month away and then at least 2 or 3 just as a buffer. So I was always 6, 7 podcasts ahead, or at least 6 or 7 scripts ahead so that I could record those podcasts. And then we were at home all the time, not going anywhere. And this is where the problem began. And you don't always see the problem as it's unfolding. It took 1 year of the pandemic, 2 years of the pandemic, and then a few months ago, it began to stall. I stopped writing topics. I stopped reading the information that helped me, that motivated me to create new content. And you can see how this starts to unfold. So when we look at a stalling factor, we always look at it somewhere in the middle towards the end when the stall is in full flow. But really, the stalling starts with the preparation stage. And you know it's happening because it's happening to you in slow motion. You can see it happening. You don't have anything prepared. It's like deciding to cook a meal at about 5:30 p.m. on a weekday, and you have no ingredients and you have no idea what recipe. And then what are you going to do? You decide to call for takeaways or you decide to go out. And this is the problem with preparation. If we're not prepared, that's the first stage of the stall. But what happens next is even more scary. What happens next is when you start to bounce. This takes us to the second stage of stalling, which is bouncing. So what is bouncing? At first, especially when it comes to podcasting, I come up with a topic and then I decide, oh, no, wait a second, that topic's not good enough. I need to look for a second topic, and then the third topic, and the fourth topic. And this is true for pretty much anything. Even if you're going out to eat, you go, okay, let's have Malaysian. No, let's have Indian. Let's have Japanese. At this point in time, when I'm in that kind of situation or that state, Renuka will stop me and go, I'm going to make a decision. Because she knows there's not going to be a resolution. There's just going to be more and more bounce. And when it comes to writing a script or doing a podcast, there is no Renuka to help me. And so I go through the process of the bounce all by myself. I will pick one topic, then another topic, then a third topic. And then I don't have enough stories for that topic, or I don't like the story. Eventually, what I'm going through is the second stage, which is just reaching for everything. And when you reach for everything, of course, you reach for nothing. So what we have are two elements of the stall quite well in progress. The first is the lack of preparation. Then suddenly there is over-preparation, or rather not able to hold on to anything because everything seems nice or everything seems terrible. At this point, something weird happens, and it's what people call the universe sending you a sign. Approximately 2 weeks ago, I got a cold, and then I had a cough, and that just spiraled to the point where I was at home for the whole week, working from home, of course, but still at home, and then was not that keen to get to the office in the second week. And the cough wouldn't go away. I'd be coughing in the morning, I'd be coughing at night, I'd be coughing in the middle of the night. Is the universe sending me a sign? No, of course not. The universe is not sitting there. There's no desk out there where they go, oh, send a sign to Sean, send a sign to Carol, send a sign to... No, there's nobody there. Nothing that sends you signs. But you're in such an advanced state of this stall that the way you look at it is, wait a second, I'm supposed to take a break. I'm supposed to do this. I have already done 8 years of podcasts back to back. Surely I'm entitled to a break. And so 1 week becomes the second week, could easily become 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then everything comes to a close. Even if you believe in signs, and even if you believe that the universe sends you signs, well, the only sign you're going to need is that you have to get up and get going. And that is probably the best way to undo that stall, which is what I'm doing here live in front of you on this podcast. The way to get rid of the stall is to talk about the problem that you're having. When we're doing an article writing course, for example, clients will sometimes stall, and then they have no topics, they have no preparation, they don't know what to do, they think they're not supposed to be article writers. Not true. Same thing with cartooning. People start off believing that they can't draw a straight line. In 6-7 weeks, they're drawing exceptionally well. But then they also stall. Again, it's preparation, chaos, universe sending signs, doing all that kind of stuff. And then they start to stall. The point is that you want to talk about, write about, draw about your stall. And when you do that, what you end up doing is not talking about something new. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already. But what it does, it gets you out of that mess. It gets you to talk about it. And you get a little check mark. Your podcast is done, your drawing is done, your article is done. Yes, it's about something that's been covered before, but people still need to hear it. People still want to hear it. They still want to read about it. They still want to see your drawing. They still want you to cook that dish, even though it's not the best that you've done. And that's how you get out of the stall. So you start off the stall, and we're summarizing here, you start off the stall with this factor of unpreparedness. You don't do enough stuff and you don't have enough ingredients in place. And of course, that's the first stage of the stall. The second stage is when you're grabbing at everything. You want to eat Malaysian food, French food, Italian food, German food, all the types of food. You can't even make up your mind what to cook, let alone what to go out and eat. And it's just bounce. And we do this with our articles. I'll choose this article, that article. Everything seems terrible. Everything seems great at the same time. At which point we're hoping that something will happen, that the universe will send us a sign. And unfortunately, no one's taken up that post. So there's no sign coming. But then we look at the bad stuff that happens. Maybe you get ill, maybe you have to take a break, whatever. And then we allocate that sign as, oh, wait a second, this was supposed to happen. And no, you're just going deeper into that stall. And the only way out of it that I know of is to talk about the stall. Because there is nothing to bounce around there. It is a confession. I'm in this mess. This is how I got into the mess. This is how I'm going to get out of the mess. And so that's the podcast for today. We're back on track, and hopefully there's no more stalling. We'll see you in 5000 BC, where I'll be preparing more articles. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? It's Wednesday here in Auckland, New Zealand, and usually what I do is record the podcast on Thursday or Friday. But today I told my wife, Renuka, that somehow at 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, I'm going to go to the office and I'm going to record a podcast. And I did that because I know what happens on Thursday. It slides very quickly to Friday. I told her a second thing, that I'll record a second podcast by Friday. And yes, I have prepared for that. And yes, I'm out of the stall. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye, and see you in 5000 BC. And now I'll go and quietly cough, because, yes, I'm still coughing.